Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Big Questions, Small Steps. My name is Amanda, and I'm glad that you could join me today. So today we're going to change focus a little bit, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about the Jewish calendar because we have an important day in the Jewish calendar today, and we have another one coming up shortly. So the Jewish calendar is not like a standard calendar in America. The Jewish calendar is known as a lunisolar calendar, so it's based off of the cycles of the moon and the sun. Sometimes in the Jewish calendar there are 12 months, and sometimes there are 13 months. The current year that we are in, there are 12 months, but I believe next year will be 13 months. It's on a rotation, basically to make up for that little bit of a portion of a day, kind of like the equivalent of a leap year. So that's just how they shift it. Today, we want to talk about an important holiday. It is a sad holiday. I don't know that you would even call it a holiday. It's a remembrance day. It's a day of mourning. It is the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. It's called Tisha B'Av, or it stands for the 9th of Av because we are in the month of Av. On this day, a lot of really bad things happen. So it is a day of mourning when the Jewish people take time to remember all of those different things, because there's a time for laughing and there's a time for crying and being remorseful. Remembering the tragedies that have happened help keep the Jewish people present and aware of all the blessings that surround them. And the lesson goes that if you don't learn from your history, you're destined to repeat it. So the Jewish people want to learn from their history, so they make sure that every year on Tisha B'Av, they mourn. They mourn for the past events. So you might be wondering, well, what happened that was so terrible? So let's start from the very beginning. Tisha B'Av actually happened when the Hebrew people were in exile from Egypt. They were wandering around in the wilderness. You might remember the golden calf story. Today's events actually happened a year after that. So God had finally said, okay, I think they learned their lesson. You're ready to go into the promised land. But the Hebrew people were scared. They were fearful. They wanted some reassurance. They weren't trusting God. And so they sent spies out to all these different places, and they sent the spies out. They had 40 days to kind of look around, do some reconnaissance, see what's all there, check out the people that were in the land, check out the food sources, things like that. Then they were supposed to come back and tell them what they found. So 40 days go, and they come back, and the spies are telling the people, oh my goodness, yes, the land is full of fruit and it's like a good place, but there are these like giant people that live there, and there's all this giant food, and there's no way we're going to be able to be in this land. They're going to not let us take over the land. It's going to be a big fight. We're not going to do it. And the people start panicking. The people get frustrated, and they're like, well, why would God send us back to this place? And why would he do this for us? And at one point, they're so frustrated by everything, they start saying, well, maybe we should just go back to Egypt, where they just were released from, because they were enslaved. They were enslaved in Egypt. So they're released from Egypt, they're in the wilderness, and they're basically freaking out. Now, it is to note that not all of the spies that went out came back and said, oh, it's terrible people and they're giants and all this other stuff. There were 2 that basically said, yeah, there's people, and yeah, there's this and that, but if God is with us, then we can do anything. So basically they had more faith and more strength in their conviction and beliefs in God. than the other spies did. And God got frustrated. Got frustrated because everybody was constantly complaining and whining and doubting and just thinking everything was so terrible. And he had continually tried to reassure them and support their growth, and they just were being very ungrateful. So if you're as old as I am, perhaps you heard your parents say, if you don't stop whining or crying, I'll give you something to whine or cry about. It's kind of what happened in that situation. God got frustrated with them whining and complaining. And so he basically said, you know what? Fine. You guys are not ready to go into the promised land. So you are going to stay wandering in this wilderness for 40 years. You're going to stay there because you didn't have faith. And he picked 40 years because the spies were sent for 40 days. And he gave the people in the wilderness 1 year for each of the days that the spies were out. So 40 years they were then sent or condoned to wander in the wilderness. Now, Tisha B'Av is important because there's a lot of devastating things that happen on this day, on the 9th of Av. After they were in exile and the people finally got to the promised land, the next thing that happened is a big thing. The first temple was destroyed on this day. It was destroyed by the Babylonians, but it was destroyed on this day. Okay? Couple hundred years later, there was a second temple, and that was destroyed on this day. So we have the wilderness adventure, if you want to call it that, the destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple. All of these things happen on this day. With each of the destructions of the temples, people felt more lost. Like they had lost their connection to God. They were searching. They were wandering. They were doubtful. So it was all kinds of problems. And Tisha B'Av is a day to mourn all of that, to mourn the times when we fall short, to mourn the times where we don't trust as we should, the times where we fall short of being all that we could be. Now, some people also throw in there the mourning for people who were in the Holocaust, and they also throw in mourning for anybody who had natural disasters. So hurricanes, floods, tsunamis, all that stuff. But that's basically by person. But typically, if you observe Tisha B'Av, you're observing the wilderness and the destruction of the first and second temples. Now, as I said, it's not really a holiday, but it is an important day. It's a mourning day. So on this day, the Jewish people do things that restrict or prevent them from happiness. That's how they show their mourning, is they're restricting full happiness. So they don't eat from sunset to sunset. Don't eat. They don't drink, not even water. They don't have marital relations or sex. They don't bathe. They don't brush their teeth. They don't wear makeup. They don't wear new clothes on this day. They try to refrain from anything that brings them joy out of respect and a sign of mourning for the fact that they didn't listen or their ancestors didn't listen. Other people also observe Tisha B'Av by the meal before Tisha B'Av. They will actually have foods that are round. That's supposed to symbolize the circle of life. So they'll have like hard-boiled eggs and rolls and things like that. Some people, when they're eating that meal, they'll sit on the ground or they'll sit on a low chair to make it a little bit less comfortable for them. Some people will even go and visit a cemetery to kind of heighten that sadness or remember that remorse feeling. Okay, so that's Tisha B'Av. It's a very important holiday in the Jewish calendar. It's not an exciting one. It's not one that Jewish people are necessarily excited about or look forward to, but it is important. So Tisha B'Av is on the 9th of Av, and it's a day of fasting. It's a sad day. It is the saddest day of the Jewish calendar. Now, the next holiday that's coming is actually the opposite of that. The next holiday that's coming in the Jewish calendar is Tu B'Av, and it's on the 15th of Av. So this will be when the moon is full, and on this day, it is the Jewish Day of Love. Many people will compare it to like the Jewish Valentine's Day. So on Tu B'Av, they celebrate in all kinds of way, all kinds of forms of love. Now there's an awesome story that goes with this, and I like it because I can just picture it in my head. So on Tu B'Av, there were females who were eligible to be married that year, and they, on the night of the full moon, on Tu B'Av, they would dress all in white, and they would go dance in the vineyards underneath the moonlight. And then if you were a male that was looking for a wife, you would be watching, and you would find your wife from there. So Tu B'Av, it's a love holiday, and I'm kind of mushy-gushy, and I enjoy that. So it's my favorite holiday of the Jewish calendar. It is a minor holiday. Not everyone celebrates it, but it is the day of love. And I think it's pretty awesome to celebrate love. Now, the Jewish people do recognize that there are many different ways to show you love and receive love. So they encourage, if you're going to celebrate on this day, to share love in different forms. Many people will wear white and go out dancing. Some people will give flowers, hint, hint to my amazing boyfriend. Some people will send cards or share love in other ways, acts of service, giving gifts, time. And some people will even get married on Tu B'Av because it's the day of love. It's actually a pretty common day to get married in the Jewish calendar. But there you go. You have the saddest day of the Jewish year, and you have the day of love. Tisha B'Av is the saddest day. Tu B'Av is the day of love. And we have both of those days in the month of Av. We're getting close to the end of the year for the Jewish calendar, but there are still many more things to come. So until next time, take care.